Hi, this is the Lisa Coors Show. I'm Lisa Coors. I'm a local personal trainer. Today we're going to talk about Parkinson's awareness. Parkinson's disease is something that you are probably seeing a lot now on the news. You're seeing Michael J. Fox, Brian Grant, Davis Finney, and numerous other people talking about Parkinson's. Today we want to inform you about what the disease is. We also want to talk to people who have Parkinson's, and one of them has brought their spouse with them. And we're so excited. Here's a couple things. I wanted to bring you some definitions, first of all, about Parkinson's. What it is, symptoms, because a lot of you, this isn't going to be something your grandparents have. It's going to be maybe something your parents have or you have. We're seeing this diagnosed even in people in their 20s. So let's talk about what Parkinson's is. And I'm going to read this word for word. Parkinson's disease is a progressive and chronic disorder of the central nervous system, and it affects movement, muscle control, and balance. It was discovered in 1817 by James Parkinson, a British physician who called it the shaking palsy. Now, a couple of my friends are coming today. They work out with me at my studio, and I train people with Parkinson's, and they're going to talk about shaking palsy. Is that really Parkinson's? Is that the main symptom? It's kind of something that everybody says, oh, it's that shaking thing. And now we're seeing more and more, there's way more other symptoms. So we'll talk about that. Statistics, 50,000 Americans are diagnosed a year with Parkinson's disease. Over 1.5 million Americans have it. We see a little bit more in men than in women, and a higher population in Caucasians versus any other culture. It affects something called dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that is produced in the brain. You normally produce dopamine when you're sleeping. So here's kind of what happens, and this is the best way I describe this to some of my students, is you have a pitcher and a catcher, and you have a ball. The ball is the neurotransmitter called dopamine. And the pitcher goes to throw the ball to the catcher, and either the ball isn't there because there's no production of the ball or the dopamine, or it's stuck. And so if you can think of a pitcher and a catcher, dopamine, the neurotransmitter or the message carrier, cannot get from one place to the other. That's just one way to talk about dopamine. And I'm simplifying it, and I know there might be some physicians watching this going, gee, Lisa, you missed the big scientific stuff. But this really is a simpler way to understand it. Let's talk about symptoms of Parkinson's. Things you may see, we talked about the tremor. There's also rigidity and stiffness in the muscles and the torso. You'll see a lot in the neck, turning the neck. Shuffling or walk in the walking gait. Bradykinesia, which is a slowness of movement. Frozen facial expression. This is one of the things as you know, a personal trainer working with people with Parkinson's, sometimes I had to understand a little bit more. They may speak to you and the facial muscles freeze. There's not a lot of movement. That's what that means. Speech issues. They may speak to you and you may not understand exactly what they're saying. Helping them to speak clearly, help them with air and pushing out the words. Postural instability is another thing, impaired balance, coordination issues. And there's plenty of other symptoms that go with those main symptoms. There's depression, irritable bowel. And again, my two guests today are going to talk about some of those other symptoms. We're also going to talk about what magnifies, what makes someone's Parkinson's symptoms worse. I'm going to read these because my first guest today is going to talk a little bit about these. What magnifies symptoms? Stress, fatigue, coldness, negativity in general, another illness, medication problems, being around negative people, or depression. What controls the symptoms? So what type of things in general could help someone with Parkinson's? And the first thing that comes to mind, and my first guest will talk about, is the use of a movement disorder specialist. This is a physician who specializes in Parkinson's. Medication, keeping it adjusted, that's the second thing that would help control symptoms. Parkinson's education, exercise, meditation, retraining the brain in how to think and how to move. Relaxation, we said, positive attitude. Interests other than Parkinson's. So not focusing your whole day about your symptoms and you and Parkinson's, getting involved socially. Support, prayer. There's lots of different things, and again today my two guests will discuss this. So I would like to introduce you today my first guest. She lives here in Anderson Township. Her name is Carol Simons, and I welcome Carol today to my show. And Carol, it's so nice to have you. I feel like I've known you forever. Carol exercises with our exercise group, our Parkinson's exercise group. And you're also an advocate for Parkinson's. So
Yes.
Tell us your Parkinson's story. Tell us about being diagnosed and...
It all started in 1992. I was 45 years old at that time, and my neighbor, a doctor, noticed my little finger quivering. I didn't even call it a tremor. And he went to my husband and said, "You really need to take her to a neurologist and get that checked out." And so we did after about a month or two, because it wasn't that important. And I saw a neurologist who was very good in diagnostic skills. And by the time we were done with a short visit, he said, "I think you have Parkinson's."
Wow.
And from that point, I started working on it. I knew nothing about Parkinson's.
Wow. Wow. So how did this diagnosis affect your career, your home life, your lifestyle? What were some things that...
Well, at first, my attitude was, this I'm going to control. I'm going to beat this. And that was a good attitude. For 2 years, we didn't tell anybody, except our movement disorder neurologist and my husband and I knew. One of the reasons, and that's classic with Parkinson's patients, to want to hide the fact that they have something that other people don't have, and trying not to be different.
Yeah.
You know, you do hide things at times. And the second reason was we wanted to see what kind of Parkinson's I had.
Okay.
One of the things my doctor told me was that Parkinson's progresses at different rates for different people.
Okay. Very interesting. What kind of symptoms do you have? I know you mentioned just before about your finger was shaking. That's why you went to the physician to get a diagnosis. But what is a palsy more your symptom, or do you have other things that challenge you?
That's a good question. At first, I just had the slight tremor, but then we noticed as the 21 years progressed that I had a good amount of shuffling when I got tired.
Okay.
And so I would march in the evening
Yeah.
around the house when I had to do something because I was going to beat this. And there were other things. There was some depression at times.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are probably the main ones for me.
Okay.
Slowness of movement was always a progressive problem.
Kind of the bradykinesia as they define it. Yeah.
Instead of taking 45 minutes to get ready, now it takes me an hour and 15 minutes to get ready. It hasn't doubled, but I do have to plan more time to do things.
I gotcha. Very interesting with the symptoms, because you all heard 21 years she's had Parkinson's. And a lot of people who are newly diagnosed, I get a lot of people in my studio, and they're just diagnosed, and their depression hits, and they go, I can't even imagine having this more than 10 years. And I look at Carol Simons, and if anybody in the community knows Carol, she's so positive and believes in exercise. And the one thing you always said to me, and I said, you've had this 21 years, what's your number one advice? And what do you always say?
Exercise every day.
Yeah.
My support group knows when I ask them what the most important thing to do is, it's exercise, exercise, exercise. Yes. That's the number one thing.
It is. And I think when I get these new people, I always want to bring Carol Simons in and sit them with my new Parkinson's diagnosed patient and say, talk to Carol, learn from Carol, and have that positive attitude. And I think that is huge with any condition or disease that you're diagnosed with. How are you an advocate for Parkinson's disease? Because you've done some amazing things nationally and locally.
Well, locally, I'm involved in a Parkinson's support group that I facilitate every month at Drake. It's called Bridgeway Point Parkinson's Support Group. But I worked in the neurology department at UC, first as a volunteer in the Parkinson's offices, and then I had a paid job, which was fun to do.
Okay.
And that got me involved in going to Washington, D.C. with a group called Parkinson's Action Network, PAN. And I just came back from a visit the end of February and visited both senators and 6 of our 14 representatives in Ohio and told them about the latest progress in Parkinson's research. PAN, Parkinson's Action Network, trains us on the latest scientific, what do I want to say, cutting edge.
Cutting edge, yeah, sure.
That's you just saw a little bit of Parkinson's working because it affects your retrieval.
Sure.
And at times when you get excited about something, that's exactly what will happen. I'll stumble. But the first day we cover all scientific menus. Second day we talk about legislative
very good.
activity that's going on. And the third day, we take all this information to our senators and representatives from our state. This year, there were over 250 of us that hit the hill, as we said, as well as there was a telephone brigade going on. And people all over the country were calling in saying that the research should not be cut back for not only Parkinson's, but all the neurological illnesses.
This is so important. This is really important for our future, for research, for the latest and greatest new technologies that are coming out. I appreciate, first of all, you being here, and second of all, the actually getting out there in DC, speaking, being the voice for Parkinson's, especially locally. Really appreciate that. Tell me a little bit about if someone was sitting on the couch right now watching our show and they just got diagnosed with Parkinson's, or they have a friend with Parkinson's or family member, what do you want them to know about Parkinson's?
The most important thing is that your attitude is very much affected, very much affects your Parkinson's. That would be the number one thing. The second thing is exercise, and the third thing is to educate yourself. We have the Parkinson's Wellness Center at University of Cincinnati that has a wealth of information about what's going on and what's available in the city and even beyond the city. They have a list of movement disorder neurologists. They have, through the American Parkinson's Disease Association, a wealth of material that they can send out for free. And
great website, isn't it?
It really is a great website, and it's a very uplifting resource for us in Cincinnati. Cincinnati has a lot to offer. There are a lot of fundraisers that help to provide exercise groups, materials for us.
Great, because it's parkinsonswellness.org. That is the website Carol's speaking of. And, Carol, I really appreciate you being with me today and educating everyone in our audience about Parkinson's disease. And just so everyone knows, every year, April is Parkinson's Awareness Month. And parkinsonswellness.org will tell you what activities are going on. Also, the APDA is the American Parkinson's Disease Association. You can Google that. They have a lot of national info. And exercise, exercise, exercise is our theme today as well. I will be right back with my next guest, which will be Chris and Heather Chaney. Thanks again to Carol Simons for being here today. And go get them, girl.
Will do.
Awesome. Welcome back to the Lisa Coors Show. Today we're talking about Parkinson's disease awareness. Before I introduce my next guest, I do want to mention one thing to you. We will start saying the word PD, and that's Parkinson's disease. So if in our conversations with my next guest, we say a lot about PD, that is Parkinson's disease, and it's a common thing you will hear amongst Parkinson's patients, their spouses, and myself. So let's get to the fun part. I want to introduce Chris and Heather Chaney. And Chris, he has been training with me for over 2.5 years. Right. And Heather, his lovely wife, has come today to talk about living with someone with Parkinson's disease. And Chris, please tell us about yourself. Tell us where you're from.
Well, I'm from this area, north of Cincinnati. I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in 2007 at the age of 53. Right in the middle of my career with Procter & Gamble. I had actually I knew something was wrong probably 6 to 7 years prior to that. So I had symptoms from Parkinson's disease 7 years before I got the diagnosis.
Wow.
Once I got the diagnosis, I made a decision, because it's progressive and chronic, to retire from Procter & Gamble as soon as I could. So I worked another less than 2 years, and I was fortunate enough to be able to be in a position to retire at age 55.
Gotcha.
And went through a long trial and error method of looking at those symptoms before we really got to, you have Parkinson's disease. So.
Wow. Talk about some of the trial and error. I know you and I have talked about that, and I want people to hear this. This is important.
First off, the first thing I noticed was I had imbalance problems. I always felt unsteady on my feet, and I could not stand inside and talk to you in a building. I had to grab a pole or a piece of furniture to hang on to. So that was it. My primary care physician and I worked together. He sent me to an ENT, ear, nose, and throat specialist first. They said I had a middle ear infection, which I took treatment for a few weeks. Went back, they retested, said, you're cured, it's okay. I knew I wasn't. I still felt that was not right, but we went on and went forward. A couple years later, I started a tremor in my left hand and my left leg. And my mother has something called essential tremor, which is hereditary. So he said, oh, that must be it. You have essential tremor. So then they put me on a blood pressure medication to lower my blood pressure, which really, in retrospect, was probably not good for me because it made my imbalance even worse.
Even worse, yeah.
And then finally, probably kind of mid-06, I started noticing my left foot was dragging. And when I talked to my primary care physician about that, he put all the facts together and said, you need to go to these guys down at University of Cincinnati, which were Parkinson's specialists. And I said, uh-oh. And that's when I got down to UC. But it took roughly 7 years to go through that searching, because I'm bad about going to the doctor. I'm a guy. I was working. I was too busy.
You admit that, though.
Well,
that's I'm a guy. I won't go to the doctor. Okay,
But I eventually got there because I felt bad enough. And it was a struggle getting to work every day. So it wasn't a whole lot of fun. So I decided after 9 years of fighting Parkinson's disease in a career, it was time to retire, and I was fortunate enough to be able to do that. And get away from that day-to-day stress was tremendous help.
That was helpful. Because in the beginning we talked about stress being a factor that really brings out the symptoms. And Chris, I want to step back a few minutes, because a lot of times in what I do as a personal trainer, I see a lot of people come to me who've been misdiagnosed. I hear this story. If I had 10 people with Parkinson's, I hear this about 6 to 7 people. I was misdiagnosed, or I didn't go to the doctor. And I think this is important for the audience at home to hear this, because there are movement disorder specialist physicians here. Your choice was the University of Cincinnati, and we know Dr. Espay is a fellow Anderson resident here. And he is your physician, is that
is correct? Yeah, I've been seeing Dr. Espay since 07 or early 08.
Wonderful guy, wonderful guy.
He is.
Heather, talk to me a little bit. Chris gets diagnosed with Parkinson's. What was your reaction as a spouse?
Well, we knew something was wrong, and that summer leading up to, Chris went in the fall to see the neurologist, and that summer we had been at a few weddings, we'd been on a vacation with people who hadn't seen us in a while, and every time I would leave the room, somebody would follow me and say, "What is wrong with Chris?" And so we knew that something was going on, but we did is when with Chris's mom and grandfather having essential tremor, we just thought maybe it was complicated essential tremor, or
Sure.
and I would Google essential tremor, and then down at the bottom it would say a related article would be on Parkinson's disease, and I would be like, well, we haven't really gotten that information, so we won't go there yet, and we'll just keep it at essential tremor.
Interesting.
So.
Did you know what Parkinson's was?
I did not. I just thought Parkinson's is a disease that old people have.
Yes, yes.
You know, his grandfather maybe had it, and we never was diagnosed or
never
whatever.
Really talked about it. And
but it wasn't something that somebody gets in their 40s and it becomes a lifelong condition. Yes. And so I do think that that's where the gift of a Michael J. Fox comes into play, that somebody who is so willing to share his story and then so willing to be out there and try to be an advocate. And
very much so. And I think Heather brings up a really good point as well. You know, we always think this is an old person's disease, and, you know, we have Michael J. Fox, we have local Brian Grant, played for Xavier University. He was diagnosed in his early 30s with Parkinson's. He played basketball, and, you know, it's not an old person's disease. And, I mean, you got a young guy sitting here, and...
Thank you.
And I think, well, you're welcome. You are a young guy. But I think that's what's important for the audience to understand is... You need to see a physician if you think this may be Parkinson's or you just don't know what it is. We need a physician's assistance for this. So how did things, let's go back to Chris, and you retired from Procter & Gamble. Right. What do you do daily? What do you do? What's your lifestyle like now?
Well, the one thing I liked about retirement, it allowed me to focus on my health, for one thing.
Yes,
I finally had time to do that. Heather and I happen to own 7.5, 8 acres of land and have horses and a lot of maintenance chores to do, a lot of grass mowing. And so I stay very active just doing outside activities like that.
Very good.
Probably the key to me was getting into an exercise program. When I met you at the Sunflower Symposium, I believe it was in 2009.
I think it was,
Right away I signed up. We did one-on-one classes and evolved to group classes from that. So being retired is great. I got away from the stress. I have a lot of work, activity to do around the house, which, talking to Dr. Espay, he says that is great. Keep that, keep active, keep on the move, along with having the exercise. Right. Helps tremendously.
Exercise, movement.
Right.
Decrease stress.
Right.
And you exercise how often?
I exercise every day.
Every day?
Every day.
So everybody's hearing this out there. I mean, Parkinson's or no Parkinson's, we need to be doing something every day. Those of you with Parkinson's, this is the secret. It's not even a secret anymore. We're trying to convince people.
I have to stretch probably 15 to 20 minutes every morning just to be able to get my day started, because first thing we do is go to the barn and take care of horses.
Sure.
And so it's not, I can't sit inside. So, but it's good because it pushes me. Because there are days when I don't want to go out there. And so it's kind of an incentive.
Tell me what it's like, the typical day with Parkinson's. I want people watching this to understand what it is like medication-wise. Give us a sense of what you do when you get out of bed in the morning.
You don't want to know.
And it has changed so much, because at the beginning, initially, when he was first put on the magic carbidopa-levodopa at the beginning, he really, it was like he... 2 days later, I used to, when I would watch him walk to the barn, I would think, oh my gosh, it's his grandfather walking to the barn. And 2 days after beginning on the true Parkinson medication, he was erect again and could stand straight.
I tell people, it's like, once I started on carbidopa-levodopa, I take a drug called Stalevo, which is a little different. But it's the same basic drug. Within 2 days, I felt like I gained 30 years of my life back. I felt like I was 85 years old. Immediately, almost overnight, going back to 55. I could walk upright, I could move, I got rid of the little shuffle. But my day, now 6 years later down the road, I typically am up by 4:30 every morning. I wake up, I'm stiff and sore. I take my first medication at 5 every day on the nose. And then I start stretching and doing my exercises in the house.
So this is 5 a.m.
5 a.m.
Yeah,
right,
okay,
right.
okay.
Because we're going to the barn typically fairly early.
Okay.
So I go through exercise and do get warmed up, get loosened up. Then I play a little bit on the computer. Then we go out to the barn. And but I have a alarm set for every 2 hours and basically 20 minutes right now that I have to take a pill.
Okay. This is another important thing that I think a lot of people who've never heard of Parkinson's go, well, what's up with the medication? And I know somebody that has Parkinson's and they have to take it on right on time. What happens, Chris, if you didn't take it 2 hours and 20 minutes, you took it 3 hours? What would happen?
When I was first diagnosed 6 years ago, whatever, it wouldn't have mattered. I could miss a half hour and no big deal. Today, if I miss, say, 5 minutes late, I'm due to take a pill fairly soon. But if I was 5 to 10 minutes off, I would go in to have the symptoms that you all were talking about earlier. I would get a stiff, very rigid. I would have difficulty walking.
I call him the Tin Man.
The Tin Man, so he's kind of,
right.
yeah.
The very
it's like
small,
he has to have his little oil on you.
Right. I really, you would be surprised at the difference in just that short period of time. The tremor comes back, it gets worse.
Wow.
And as the day goes by, it gets more and more pronounced.
And probably the biggest symptom, I think, that gets not talked about is fatigue.
Is fatigue. Okay.
Not only does the Parkinson's delivery make you fatigued, but the side effect of the medicines, you read all the side effects, they wear you out.
So you kind of have a double dose of fatigue, the Parkinson's, and then, your meds. Okay.
So what I do is I take naps. I take a nap in the morning, I take a nap every afternoon, sometimes multiple. So
This is good. Heather, what kind of challenges do you have being married to someone with Parkinson's? Because again, our show's going to be out there, and there's going to be spouses, there's going to be even kids of Parkinson's patients. What are some of the challenges you have, and how do you cope with that?
Well, I think so much of it has to do with the fact that Chris has Parkinson's disease, but he does not allow Parkinson's to define who he is as a person. He's always been a very positive, upbeat person, and it is a true blessing that he continues to have that positive outlook. That is not always the case, and so many people with Parkinson's, they fight depression.
Right, they do.
And to me, that is just, it's almost like, how dare you put that on top of people who are fighting so much physically to begin with. But to me, the fact that he remains positive, that our family, friends, that we've met so many people just through even your exercise class that have become our lifelong friends now, that all that combines together to know that we can walk this walk, and it's not what we had planned, it's not what we thought our retirement would hold, but we have a great faith, and all those things together. It's just, you just take it a day at a time, and a few hours at a time. And
well, the whole, you all talked it earlier, the whole attitude, you have to have that positive attitude.
Positive attitude. Chris and Heather, I really appreciate the two of you coming. And before we wrap up here, these shirts we're wearing today, this is our Steady Strides race. This is every June, first week of June, supports our nonprofit, which is the Parkinson's Wellness, Tri-State Parkinson's Wellness. Heather and Chris Chaney, thank you so much for coming in today and sharing your story about Parkinson's. And for further information, again, parkinsonswellness.org. And we have plenty other slides we'll put up for you. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching us.